Listeners be advised. The Soliloquy podcast discuss matters related to the human experience and many that are sexual in nature. Due to this, some conversations may surround triggering topics such as sexual violence, self-harm, abuse, and much more. Please be advised, a list of crisis and psychological resources will be available in the show notes of this episode. With that said, let's get started with the show.
Ladies and gentlemen, may I have your attention please as we go through the following safety instructions.
In the event that there is a loss of cabin pressure, oxygen mask will drop from the overhead. Place the mask over your nose and mouth. Breathe normally as oxygen is flowing even if the mask is not inflated. Be sure to adjust your own mask before helping others.
Hello, everyone. Welcome to the Soliloquy podcast, where we step out and speak on sexuality. This is your favorite host, Vernon T. Scott, also known as Slaytor Jackson, and for you freaky motherfuckers out there, Sebastian Adams. On today's episode, we will be talking about, well, it's going to be a mix of two topics, preferences, as well as a conversation about no fats, no films, no old people. And I have the pleasure of being in the presence of a very beautiful spirit by the name of Jennifer Moore. How are you doing today?
I am doing well. I actually just woke up from a nap.
Yes, Nap. Oh my God.
So I am much more refreshed than I was before.
Hey,
And
I understand.
if you hear a little bit of like happy moaning next to me, that is my pug.
Look, I just know
Yeah.
after we're done today, I am definitely going to take a nap. Okay, I
Mhm.
cannot say nap because I feel like it's going to be a good 10 hours. Like, this recent holiday has had me extremely tired.
I feel ya. I totally feel ya. Yeah, yeah. Whether it's the transportation, it's the being around a whole bunch of people, eating foods you're not used to eating, all that stuff for sure.
Exactly,
Yeah.
exactly. And I've come across way too many people. It's a mix of all kinds of energies, and I'm just like, oh, let it all go. Get out of my system. I just want to be
Hmm.
me. But before we even get into the conversation, Jennifer, would you like to introduce yourself to the listeners out there? Oh, by the way, so you all know she is an empath. So we love it.
Hmm.
So, Jennifer, who are you?
Well, as you said, I am an empath, and I'm such an empath that I spent a good like 30 years of my life struggling with being highly sensitive and picking up all the thoughts, feelings, and energy and sensations that are coming from the world around me. And that has turned me into an author of a actually now award-winning Amazon bestseller, Empathic Mastery, which is a 5-step system to go from emotional hot mess to thriving success. And you can get that over on Amazon and other kinds of book platforms. And so I'm an author, and I'm also a mentor for EFT International, which, if you're not familiar with EFT, that stands for Emotional Freedom Techniques, which really has been truly life-changing for me. Some people also know it as tapping. And when I'm not tapping or writing, I am either hanging out with my pug, wandering around in the garden, hanging out with my husband. We live in Maine, which is a beautiful, beautiful place. We live out in the country but not too far from the city, and just surrounded by pines and bees and flowers and all kinds of other stuff.
Oh, that sounds so beautiful. Oh my God.
It is. It's really wonderful here, except we get snow. Like, seriously, we get snow.
Mm. See, I love the sight of snow. I love the cold weather, but the thing is, because I lived in Philly for a short period of time, I enjoy, those days you can go out, play in the snow a little bit, but I also did not enjoy those days where you actually had to walk in the snow because guess what? School is not canceled.
No, school is not canceled. And the other thing that I am not a huge fan of is shoveling myself out of the snow. And like if I didn't have to drive in it and I didn't have to shovel it, then I think I agree with you. It's really, really beautiful. And especially there is nothing like the next day after an ice storm when the skies are clear blue and the sun is like brighter than ever and everything glistens like diamonds and it is just the most beautiful thing you've ever seen and we get those like not every single year but every couple years we'll have one of those like spectacular ice storms that does total damage to trees and everything else and knocks our power out for like a week but it's beautiful so
Look, you better paint a good picture. I feel like
mhm.
the listeners right now are just like in that space. They're just like, why am I at peace?
Yeah. Yeah. Well, and I was visualizing as I was describing it, I was visualizing this time where I was in my car after an ice storm and I just happened to be driving down a road that I'd never seen before. And all of a sudden it was just like it was truly just spectacular. It was so beautiful and everything was like sparkling with light and diamonds of just ice and it really was just gorgeous. So it's a beautiful place here, and our summers are unrivaled. Like they are just the most beautiful summers you could possibly imagine.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah.
So, everyone take a trip to Maine at least once. Well, actually twice in the summer as well as in the winter because look, that sounds like a sight to see, and I'm okay with
Hmm.
being trapped in a snowstorm. Let's go ahead and get it started up.
Hmm. Absolutely.
Only for a day though.
Yeah.
Well, I think the audience knows who you are, have a good feeling. They're feeling great. I'm feeling phenomenal now. You woke me up.
That's good.
I'm still
Considering
taking
that,
that nap.
yeah, so considering that both of us are going like, beforehand. Yeah.
Right. So, to get into the conversation, I know one of the things that we did talk about within our intake meeting was how our preferences shift over time.
Hmm.
For yourself, what were some of the things that you've noticed that you either became more attracted to or like less as you aged? Because look, we're not the same person that we were 3 years ago. We're probably not even the same person we were yesterday. Because come on.
Absolutely. And when you start talking about being female and going through the big M and how much like your hormones really, really shift things and, what was, as well as just pragmatism, So what comes to my mind actually is one of the very, like when I was younger, I absolutely loved lingerie and particularly like corsets and lacy stuff and just really like something that made me look like I was like working in a brothel in New Orleans at the turn of the
Mm.
last century. Like I was so into that. And then I got to a point where as I started to get older and I actually could afford to purchase more of it, I discovered that it's not comfortable.
That is hilarious. I,
And
mhm.
go on, go on.
Was it because it was no longer a luxury item that it just lost its jazz?
I think there's a couple things. One is that so being an empath and being kind of a magical orientation, I do recall other lifetimes. And I will just say that I have spent a number of them working in like the temples and the brothels in sort of the sex industry. And so before I had done a lot of work on sort of resolving this, I think my attraction to the clothing was kind of almost like that last vestiges of previous lives. And as I healed that relationship and some of the stuff that I experienced in those lives, I think that it had less of a hold. I
Mm.
don't think it was, to my awareness, I don't think it was as much about the preciousness of it in terms of the cost of the clothing, as much as it really was like if you've ever tried on a corset, they are freaking uncomfortable. Like they bind you in all of the wrong places. And I know that there's probably somebody who's really, really into fetish wear who's listening to this right now who might be like, you just never got a good corset fitting. And I will probably be inclined to agree that I never, I mean, I always was buying stuff that was off the rack. I was never buying anything that was fitted specifically for me. But I also trained and started studying breath work, and being able to take a really deep, full breath became a lot more attractive to me and became way more of a preference than necessarily wearing stuff that looked beautiful but felt really tight and binding and uncomfortable. So I think that sort of even like high heels. Like when I was younger, I would wear high heels. Like I thought nothing of wearing like stilettos and everything. I going to a wedding on a booze cruise and getting my heels caught in caught between the slats of the dock trying to get onto the boat, that kind of cured me of my love for high heels. So in some ways, I think it's more about comfort
Hmm.
and way more about just and about and empowerment, like actually being able to breathe. That really was appealing to me. So it's funny, I was not at all expecting to go down this rabbit hole or talk about, in terms of preferences, like, but when you asked the question, I was like, oh yeah, when I was younger, I was really, really, really into just the beauty, the look, the lace, sort of the leather and the lace, as it were.
You know, when you said that just allowing yourself to breathe, that touched me because that's how I am. Because I
Yeah.
love to be comfortable. I like, even when it comes to the things that I do purchase to, make myself feel sexier, make myself feel good, it's always something that is loose fitting because I still feel free, but I still feel sexy at the same time. And I love lace clothing as well. But like I don't I'm against underwear. So like there's people who've reached out to me like, oh, do you wear a thong and stuff like that? And I'm just like, no, because it seems so restrictive. It feels so restricting.
So
Um,
restricting.
it's like I want things that are loose, things
Mm-hmm.
that are free, things that are breezy, because when I can feel air, when I can take a breath, I just feel here. I,
Yeah.
I feel in the moment rather than wearing something that's very tight fitting to fit like an illusion of sexiness. I
Yes.
want to be sexy and feel sexy and look sexy to myself in a free way.
Yes. Well, and I think for me that when I was younger, my sexuality and my sense of attractiveness and my sense of pleasure was very tied into the gaze of the other.
Mm,
And so the idea of looking a certain way and being attractive, like I really got off on the gaze. And I think that as an empath, there is a way that we actually really do kind of get into this tape loop of feeling the other person's desire and particularly their attraction towards us, and from that being able to kind of like get that sort of contact high from them.
mm,
But what I discovered for myself was that, and God forbid thongs. I mean, I don't like the people who are so accustomed to them that they're more comfortable in them. I'm like, thank you, but I do not want a piece of dental floss going up my butt crack.
exactly.
And but what I realized is that I would prefer to be physically comfortable and not distracted by the sensation of something like, like a binding underwire or like a
Mm,
corset stay or like itchy lace or something like that. Because even though visually I might be able to kind of psych myself into this mental idea of how I look, I'm going to be really dissociated from my body and really distracted because I'm not fully like, because there's a part of me that there's a lot of bandwidth that is getting used up by trying to ignore the discomfort. And, as I became less more invested in my sense of self and my pleasure being about what makes me tick, what makes me happy, what makes me me, and less of am I attractive to this other person.
Mm,
I think that the turn on of like a lot of really beautiful lingerie and and like I I don't know if I'd say fetish wear, but because we're not talking like DS fetish wear, but more like just kind of like I said, looking like I belonged in either a French or brothel in New Orleans from the turn of the last century. It was very much more about the gaze and
mhm.
less about what was going on inside of my own body.
The Soliloquy podcast focuses on the variability of sexual expression. When it comes to sexual expression, we often depend on pornography to illustrate how one must perform sexually. For those who have not learned this by now, the stuff you see in porn is not real. Pornography provides a singular perspective of sexual expression that is not often the reality we see during our own sexual encounters. The Soliloquy podcast is a conversation that takes you outside of the compressed box of what many know about sex. Some of the topics we discuss includes kinks, condom usage, status disclosure, and past sexual experiences. The Soliloquy podcast steps out on sexual norms and recognizes that the norm is not the only normal. Subscribe today and join the conversation.
About the gaze and less about what was going on inside of my own body.
Mm. And one of the things we are going to go deeper into is the gaze, like the male
Yeah.
gaze in general, well, specifically. But before we even get into that, I wonder how did the male, not necessarily the male gaze, but other people's gaze or other people's view of yourself impact the way that you found a partner, like in terms of like your preferences for a partner, something like that.
I'm just breathing and thinking about this because I think so as a younger woman and especially like a teenage girl, I mean I was born I'm at the tail end of the baby boom.
Mhm.
And I was born at the time where, all of the fathers were like, go to work, come home, wife hands the paper and a martini to them, and they just sort of like they do their thing. And there wasn't a lot of expectation of the father to be engaging with their children. And on top of it, my dad had sustained a frontal lobe brain injury at the age of 4 where he fell out of a moving car and cracked
Oh.
his skull open. And when I think about it now as an adult and understanding neuroscience more now, I'm absolutely amazed at what my father was able to do. But being able to relate to a very, very chatty, very verbal, very high energy, very engaged, artistic, creative, empathic little girl was not on the top of his list. Like it was not in his skill set. And so I grew up with a father who didn't know how to engage with me. And I think about it now and I realized it's so sad to me because related to people verbally mostly, which is why podcasting is like my dream because it just makes me so happy to be able to connect with other people because pretty much most of us who are in podcasting like we love to talk.
Mm,
But my dad was somebody who just could not be there. Like he just did not, I mean, he literally did not have the brain power to parse out conversation. So by the time I was like 16, 17, 18, 19 years old, I desperately wanted to be seen, to be noticed, to be regarded. And I wanted to be seen as beautiful. Like it was like that was one of the most important things to me. So if I was getting even like a little inkling of attention, that was enough for me to be like, okay, you're it. And so I would say that I was not as interested in what was I looking for as what was biting, like it was more about like who would nibble on the bait not necessarily was this person really appropriate for me. Like I was just like, hey, if they're interested, if they're a breathing body, I'll go there. And I did have, I think about it, and I did have if in terms of my own preferences, I definitely was attracted to beautiful looking people, and especially like sort of very kind of gender fluid males. Like I ended up in a number of relationships in my earlier days with people who were cisgendered male, but who were much more gender fluid and what much more interested in sort of playing with and flexing the gender roles and everything. And so I would say that was something that kind of like I was like, oh, that person is like I would go for the people who were aesthetically beautiful to me
Hmm.
because I'm also a visual artist and a photographer. So I would go for if I had a choice of like two people paying attention to me and one was visually attractive and one was not so attractive, I'd go for the one that I thought was more attractive. And I definitely had a thing for sort of more gender fluid, like sort of not necessarily tall, dark, and handsome, but sort of like dark, brooding, mysterious, and somewhat gender queer.
Hmm.
Yeah.
I'm thinking like in terms of, because I'm thinking like culturally, I would describe that as. Because I want to say a little bit of the emo, but I don't want to say it's emo, but more so like when I was younger, around four, not four, around eight, nine, 10, there was that term metrosexual.
Yes. Yeah.
Would that be?
No, actually, I mean, I was going for artists and musicians when I was younger.
Oh.
I was really going in for the artists and musicians, and I was in art school, so my pool was generally artists and musicians.
Mm.
My I just remembered my very first crush, which was my very first crush was actually, I don't know if this is way before your time, but there was a TV series called HR Puffin Stuff, and there was this actor Jack Wild who was on it, who played who he was, I can't even remember what his character's name was, Jimmy, and he had this flute called Freddie the Flute. And I mean, the series was like so psychedelic and trippy and ridiculous. Like there was like one, like HR Puffin Stuff. Like, can you talk about a more obvious weed reference than that? But of course, I was a small child, but I was really fascinated. I mean, I just had this mad crush on this guy. But if anybody knows who I'm talking about, he was also the Artful Dodger in the Oliver Twist series that came out in the 1960s. He was not an attractive person. Was kind of like a toad, but I just thought he was the most beautiful person when I was really little. So I mean, who knows what makes us tick, but generally for me it was more of these kind of I don't know, I guess like what is that? The manic pixie dream girl, or have you ever heard of that? Like the
I
manic
have
pixie.
not heard of that.
Oh yeah, this is a term that was popular for a little while about the kind of like the sort of the manic pixie like flaky girl. I guess I would say I kind of went for the manic pixie dream brooding musician dream boy.
Oh, I definitely looked up a picture, and he reminds me of Alfalfa from the Little Rascals.
Yes, and what's weird is that conversely, he does look a lot like Alfalfa. I never put those two together, and yet ironically, I found Alfalfa really kind of repugnant. Not at all attractive. Like there was something so distasteful about Alfalfa's
Was
personality.
the hair?
Yeah.
It had to have been the hair.
I mean, the whole thing. I mean, oh God. I mean, let's not even go down the Little Rascals rabbit hole because there was so much wrong about the Little Rascals.
So much.
Yeah, so much.
Oh gosh, but okay, I could see the appeal. So
Yeah.
no judgment here. I do because I pulled up. I'm like all through this man's stuff now.
Hmm.
Google is very evasive,
Yeah.
and I see a picture for I guess when he might have been like teenager in the musical scene or acting. And I'm
Yeah.
like, okay, yes for the swoop, yes for the bangs. I'm like, okay, I get it.
Well, and the bell bottoms and the groovy fringed vest. I mean,
The appeal is there. Uh,
well, and at the same time, that was and then, then there was like, I grew up in the time where it's like you had the Partridge Family and you had like Tiger Beat magazine and everything. And so like the teeny bot, like it was like David Cassidy, Sean Cassidy, Leif Garrett, trying to think of, the Bee Gees, like Robin Gibb, and or what is the baby brother Gibb? Like, I don't know, Andy Gibb, I think it was. Anyway, just thinking about like there was definitely sort of a, all of the dreamy rock stars that or
mhm.
pop stars that you're supposed to find attractive.
Mm,
Yeah.
yes. I think that's like the generational, not even generational, cross-generational tie that a lot of people um deal with, most definitely when it comes to their preferences and who they find attractive, is that even though this is a generalization, but I personally feel as though most people really do have an attraction to musicians
Mm-hmm.
that
Mm-hmm.
because one not necessarily because they're famous, but we see their faces so often in that familiarity. And then to be completely honest, the record industry does look for extremely attractive people when they do like hire someone. So it was like, of course I want to like date this person. They're beautiful and they can
Yeah.
sing to me whenever I'm feeling down.
Um,
Don't judge me, judge your mom and your daddy.
Well, and I think, there's two things that are coming to my mind. One is like if you ever watched if you ever were a fan of the Brady Bunch, there was the time where Greg Brady was going to become like a rock star and they were going to turn him into Johnny Bravo. And the whole joke about this was that the reason it wasn't that he had any talent, it was that he fit the suit. And so they were like he visually fit the description and they were going to build a whole persona around him. And so I think you're completely right on about the idea that the music industry looks for the look and then promotes it and builds it up. And I mean, it used to be like even, like Milli Vanilli and other bands where you would have perfectly good musicians writing really wonderful music, and then they would have skinnier, attractive models lip syncing the music because of the fact that they didn't the musician themselves did not fit the visual thing. So I think you're so right on there. I would also say the other side of it though is that I think music touches something much deeper in us than a lot of other things do. And maybe part of the reason why so many people are attracted to and have crushes on and even like feel sexual attraction towards musicians is because musicians express feelings in a way that in a culture that does not acknowledge emotions a lot of the time, and they evoke emotions within us. And so I think that and especially pop stars that were spoon fed. Like I don't know whether if males are spoon fed female musicians quite to the same extent, but I mean, certainly you've got like, like that whole kind of like sexy female musician.
Mhm,
But I think with girls, there's this entire pop culture thing of like these kind of like very androgynous, very pretty, very safe and safe boys to fantasize or young men to fantasize about, who are also singing about love and singing about romance and singing about all this stuff. So I really do think that we're kind of in some ways kind of brainwashed, groomed.
yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
That's an excellent point, and I agree with you 100%. Like, and when you mention like in terms of like what men see, and I think when I think on a broader scheme, and not just like within the Black community and Black men, I think a lot of the visualizations that we receive in terms of musicians is about role modeling. Like, yes, you might have R&B artists, country singers, and individuals singing about the emotions of things, but that is not necessarily how we should treat a person, treat a partner, maybe how we can romance them in a sense, or, put on a facade of romance. And then when it comes to the other things, we focus heavily on their lived experiences because this is what the man is supposed to do. This is what the man is supposed to be going out here to get money, working the jobs, doing this thing, that thing. It's pretty much building up that role of what you're supposed to do and who you're supposed to be as a man by idolizing these musicians. And then you have the female performers, which are those that idolize our attractions and what we're supposed to perceive as being beautiful, what we're supposed to make our preferences.
Right.
And because the women are more likely singing something related to sex or romance and like catering to their partner, is like, okay, that's what I'm supposed to expect from that my woman partner, my female partners, that, oh, she's supposed to provide me with the sex, she's supposed to cater to my needs, she's supposed to romance me, be my confidant, and all these other things, because that's what her sing song role has projected all these years.
Right. Well, and I started to realize a while back as I started to do a lot of sort of decolonizing from media and American culture or pop culture around what does it mean to be female? What does it mean to be male? What does it mean to be a human being outside
Mhm.
of our gender identity? And looking at especially like misogyny and violence against women. And I started to realize that if you start listening to the lyrics as well as watching a lot of movies in our pop culture, there is so much like bad stalker energy that
Mm,
is in music. Like I find it really ironic. Like there's a song, it's the I think it's called the band is the Association or the group is the Association. I think it was the Association, but it's called Cherish.
mhm,
And it's like the classic wedding song. They've got the wedding bells ding dong ding dong. And but the thing is the song goes, cherish is the word I use to describe, like how I feel about you. But then there's the line, the chorus of it, which when I listened to it for the first time and heard, like I read the lyrics, I went, oh my God, oh no, you didn't. Because what they are saying is, I don't know how many times I wish that I could hold you. I don't know how many times I wish that I had told you. I don't know how many times I wish that I could fold you into someone who would cherish me as much as I cherish you. And I do. And the entire song is about a guy who's obsessed with a woman who is not that into him and how he just wants to basically mold her into somebody who would cherish him as much as he cherished her. And like this is a song that was used in like, I mean, God only knows how many people used it as their like wedding song, like the song they dance to at the beginning of a thing.
mm-mm.
And it's like you start listening to a lot of lyrics and start watching a lot of movies, and one of the messages that especially I think as females we are raised to look at is the idea of, you're not that into him, you might not be all that attracted to him, but he's got spunk and he's interested in you and he's just not going to give up. And this idea that the man who pursues you, who chases you, who breaks down your resistance, that's the man who wins your heart. And I mean, even like the, Hepburn and Tracy, I think, Spencer Tracy and Catherine Hepburn, and like just these tropes of like they don't get along, they don't like each other, but they fall in love, the kind of like, I mean, it's still to this day, watch any Christmas special on Netflix and it starts with the formula of she and he hate each other and by the end of it they're in love with each other. And I think that we get such, and then there's the whole thing of like the learning to be attracted to the bad boy,
Mm,
Because like, oh, he's just misunderstood. And so we tolerate so much bad behavior, but I also think we are groomed to like for a lot of stuff that is just so not good for us.
exactly.
Yeah.
I agree 100%. For any person out there who is looking for them a bad boy, don't pursue any bad boy that is not in therapy. That's all I'm saying.
Yeah,
Like,
yeah,
make
yeah,
sure he's
yeah.
working on himself.
Make sure that he's done his work. He's looked at his relationship with his mama and his daddy. Yeah. And that he's not making up excuses. And if he starts putting anything on, well, I did that because of you, run in the opposite direction.
Not right.
Yeah.
But yeah, right.
Yeah.
Like, oh, gaslighting is so prevalent. It's
Oh, gaslighting.
ugh,
Yeah.
we're not going to go into that.
Yeah. Yeah. You and I could do a series on gaslighting, I'm sure.
Girl.
Yeah.
Okay, so I did promise that we'll get back to, well, all of this was essentially related to the male gaze as well, in a way.
Exactly. Exactly. Yeah, I mean, it sort of feels like we're leading all of this up to, as well as we're talking about beauty standards, we're talking about cultural standards, we're talking about all of in some ways, I feel like what we're talking about is how we are groomed
Hmm.
as people to believe all of these lies about what is sexy, what is desirable, what is wonderful, and we haven't even talked about, I mean, we've talked about pop culture, but we haven't even talked about porn, which then adds a whole other level of this is what sexuality is.
Oh my gosh. That's one of the things that I am researching because there's this thing that I found when I was, doing dissertation stuff called sexual scripts. And I've been looking into that a lot deeper. And then that brought me into thinking about how sexual scripts are shown through porn.
Mm-hmm.
And we do fall within certain roles because of the porn that we watch. Like when you think about how people might express themselves sexually, be it queer or heterosexual. Like you have, oh, one person has to be the female in the situation, one person has to be the male. Even whenever you're going in within like a homosexual or queer engagement, oh, somebody has to be the female here and the other person has to be the male
The
rather
idea
than
that there has to be a top and a bottom, like
exactly.
I, I'm almost speechless here just because and like and then you get these things like a lot of there's this whole sort of movement or phenomenon within kind of like the transformational entrepreneur, transformational coaching world, some of the transformational programs where there's this very, very strong idea of women are most in their power when they are soft and receptive. Women are most in their power when they allow the male, they empower the man to be the decision maker and the strong person and the this and the that. And even stuff that I've run across, which is saying that if a woman is more gender fluid or if she's in a relationship where there's a great, there's a balance of power. And I mean, I am, on outside from outside appearances, I'm a cisgendered female married to a heterosexual male. And yet my marriage is really very gender fluid and our relationships and our roles are very much are not defined by our gender as much as it's defined by like what are you good at and what am I good at.
Mm.
And there's, like, so for example, I'm a really good cook, not him, not so much. Although he did impress me when we first worked, he was courting me and he made me a cherry pie for Valentine's Day, which to this day, we're talking like, it will be 23 years this Valentine's Day that he made me that cherry pie. And it's still like, I'm still impressed, but, that was the best thing he ever cooked.
Look, he got one good thing, and
I
I
yeah, one
love it.
good thing
I
right
love
there.
it.
Yeah. But I cook, he does the laundry. He does the laundry really well. But it's fascinating how many messages there are about the idea of adhering to these incredibly limited gender scripts with porn, and then I don't know if you ever watched the Joseph Gordon-Levitt movie, Don John. It is so, if you have not watched it, seriously,
Mhm.
watch this movie. I really want to recommend. It is so the story is he's a porn addict, his girlfriend is a romance addict, and just watching the way that they have sex with each other, watching the way that they engage with each other. She's all fantasizing about the love and the romance, and the way that he expresses his love for her is by buying her like the diamond tennis bracelet. And he's all about like the big, the big chest and the big hair and the faked orgasms and all of this. And it's like they are not relating to each other at all. It is truly one of the most powerful, effective, and honestly spectacular movies I've ever seen about the way that females and males are groomed around our sexuality. And JGL is just amazing, amazing, amazing. And it's Scarlett Johansson plays the girlfriend, and then Julianne Moore plays this woman who Levitt connects with in the story and kind of discovers his true, finds his own, actually finds his true sexuality, and starts to have a real authentic relationship with her. But it just is so fascinating how we do find ourselves completely sucked into these artificial, arbitrary scripts
Mm.
that are so not what makes us truly happy.
It's wild. And it's funny that you mentioned that movie. I have not seen it, but I remember when it came out and I really wanted to see it and I did not go see it. So I thank you. I can pull it
I
up
mean,
now.
seriously, like pull it up and watch this movie. Watch this movie. And it's funny. I've got sort of a collection of like I liked the movie what there with Tim Robbins and Pink and Mark Ruffalo. Thank you for sharing. I think that one I think is good, but it's not nearly and that's about another person with a sex addiction. But it's not nearly as good as Don John because it's so accurate. It's so spectacularly accurate. I really, really, really appreciate it a lot.
Oh yeah, I'm gonna
Yeah.
watch that. Yes.
The other movie I just want to make a mention to it that is more about the female fantasy
Hmm.
is He's Not That Into You. And I really, really love that movie because while men are being culture, men are sort of like, I think, and I know that this is not true for absolutely everybody, but I think for at least for me and my generation, there were a lot of women who, if we were watching porn, it was more about like receiving a script or a role of what it looks like to be a female who's experiencing pleasure and being aroused by it, and not necessarily like watching it even for our own pleasure as much as it's kind of engaging in this sort of like, this is what sexuality looks like. But I think that for females, it's the romance novels, it's the fantasy of the gifts that they buy, it's the idea that he's going to sweep you off your feet, but also kind of the like ridiculous kind of anxiety that comes up about, will he call me back? Is he into me?
Mm.
Does he want to be in a relationship with me? And I really, really loved He's Not That Into You with Goodwin and Justin Long as the two sort of lead characters, because again, it really portrays the anguish and the insanity that we put ourselves through in relationships. And even also like they articulate like they literally say the thing like so many women are taught, like when a man is when like with little girls, we are socialized and groomed with this message of, if a male is teasing you, if a male
Mm.
is harassing you, if a male is bothering you, I guarantee you, like I was taught this. I can't even count the number of times I was told, oh, that's because he likes you.
Mm.
And I mean, I'd like to all of the listeners right now, all of the female listeners, it's like, hands up. Like, how many times were you being harassed by a little boy? And instead of having somebody say, well, then, like tell him to go F himself and tell him to cut the shit. I hope it's okay to swear here.
Oh, of course. I already done
Okay.
it. You're good.
Okay. Yeah. But like instead of saying, basically telling him to step off, it's like the message that we are as females are given from an incredibly early age is, oh, that's because he likes you. He's harassing you. He's
Hmm.
sticking your pigtail in an inkwell. Oh, that's because he must really like you. And talk about like a cultural message that really just screws us up royally. If we are taught from the age of 3, 4, 5, 6 years old on that the cue that a male is interested in us, or if or even like anybody is interested in us, that they're going to harass us and like be mean to us and tease us and do all kinds of stuff like that. I mean, talk about a setup for like rape culture and domestic violence, you know?
Exactly.
Yeah.
And I was literally leaving the note to actually bring this conversation back up in our next episode, since it is dealing with that, because I will argue that we really are both, well, all genders are socialized to enable violence against women, to allow people to treat us unfairly. Like I was
Mm-hmm.
talking to a friend yesterday who was like, oh, I don't want to complain, or there's always somebody who has it worse. And I was like, no, you have the right to complain. Yes, somebody else does have it worse, but that does not mean that you cannot express what is actually bothering you, because that same person, like if you want to go out and find the person who's having it worse so that they can let you know everything that's going on with yourself so you can have the comfort, and then you can tell them what's going on in your life, feel free. But at the end of the day, you still can express what's bothering. It is
Well,
perfectly fine to do that.
it is perfectly fine to do that. And it's, we do, there's no such thing as like the trauma Olympics.
Amen.
And yet we live in a culture where there is so much, like, I literally have seen people dismiss other people's grief and misery because they feel that theirs trumps the other person's. And so there's the one side of us being like, well, I'm not really worthy of grieving because I only lost my job, my house didn't burn to the ground, and I didn't get cancer, and yada yada yada. Or oh, I'm not allowed to complain about this experience because my boss made a pass at me and was actually harassing me, but I wasn't raped in the street 5 times.
Mm.
Like, we have so many ways that we invalidate our own misery, but we also invalidate other people's misery and dismiss it and everything. But last time I checked, nobody was getting gold medals. Like, there's no trauma Olympics. And as an EFT practitioner, as somebody who works with people on just being present with what's true for us, it's like sometimes, like, just like, your grief is your grief, your fear is your fear, your wounds are your wounds. It doesn't matter how you got them. If they are there, you deserve to acknowledge them.
That's a word, and I agree 100%. Now we're getting close to the end of this episode, but there's one more thing that I wanted to discuss before I do at least one never have I ever question and close us out. It's the concept of how empaths can be like influenced by the desires of others. We
Ah,
talked about that in our intake meeting. What knowledge would you like to bestow upon the listeners?
so, first off, in my experience, as empaths, we are sensitive. If you identify or recognize that you are an empath, and let me just define the word. So, for me, an empath is a being, doesn't have to be a human. It could be a dog, could be a cat, it could be any living creature. But an empath is a being who picks up the thoughts, the feelings, the energy, and the sensations from the world around them and feels, but unlike people who are just sort of have extrasensory perception or psychic awareness, where they might be sensing it, but they understand that it's coming from outside of them. What I distinguish the difference between an empath and a person who's just sensitive and open to feeling or to knowing what's going on in the world is that empaths process the information through their own filters. And so the challenge is that you might have the experience of coming into an encounter with another human being, and maybe on first glance you're not that attracted to them, like you're just not that into them, that it doesn't feel that it's sort of like maybe not. But then as you're in the presence of them and they are attracted to you, all of a sudden you start feeling their desire. And that starts to be, but because of the way empaths pick things up and experience it through their own filters, suddenly what's their desire becomes your desire. And this is one of the reasons why, as I got older, I actually started to pump the brakes in terms of going after relationships. Because when I was younger, I mean, like it took no time whatsoever for me to be in a physically intimate relationship because I didn't want to be a prude. I didn't want to be, like one of those kinds of people. So I was very inclined to be very sexually progressive very, very early. But what I've personally found is that sex is intoxicating. And if you do not know what you think about somebody, sex will not help you to know that. If
Mm,
anything, it will actually distort your perception of reality more. And it will, because once you have sex with somebody, in my experience, you become invested in the outcome of the situation. I mean, maybe if you're just going for a completely casual one night stand hookup, that's not going to be the case. Like, and if that works for you and you can do that without any strings attached and without any consequences, like seriously knock yourself out. I am, you know, in my personal experience, just being really clear about the agenda and about what I am doing, like they're some of the best hookups I've had have been ones where we both been really clear and just been like, I am not looking for anything. And I was the one who said, I'm not looking for anything, no strings, nothing, let's just hook up. And they were just fun. But the challenge is that I think a lot of times we're not that clear about what we're looking for. And we do hook up. And then maybe one of the people is thinking that it is just a one night stand. The other person may be thinking, oh, what is this going to turn into? Once once sex becomes part of the equation, as empaths especially, we really lose the plot. It can be very, very hard to discern what's going on. So
mm,
what I personally have started to do or decided to do back in my courting days was that I was going to give myself more time and that I was just going to take time like to just watch and observe and really cultivate the question of, am I into this person? Like, and I think I was saying this too when we did our pre-interview of just like, the Janet Jackson song, What Have You Done For Me Lately? That kind of became kind of the theme energy of what I wanted to cultivate anytime I was pursuing a relationship with somebody was really like, what have they done for me lately? Because as empaths, we also very frequently are thinking about what can we do for them, how are we how are we meeting their needs, are they feeling good? Because the thing about the empath is we feel better when other people feel better, we feel good when other people feel good, and it gets really confusing what's our good and what's their good. And in my experience, taking your time to actually find out who that person is and not, like notice, like if you, in even something as simple as you're having a conversation, if you throw out a bid and you share a piece of information, do they ask you a question about you? Do they continue to engage with that question or engage with you about it? Or did they take it and turn it and it's all about them? Like are they considerate of you? Are they asking you as many questions about you as you are as you are? Like, are they as interested? Do they want to know who you really are? Or is it totally about what, are they like even something like if all they're talking about is like, oh my God, you're so beautiful, you're so sexy, you're so this, you're so that, are they really talking about who you are?
mm,
Or are they talking about their projection of what they see you as?
mm. A word. Oh my God. Y'all better take that message. Take that message and
Yeah.
take it
So
home.
pump the brakes and listen to Janet Jackson's What Have You Done For Me Lately?
But like I felt that because like even with myself, like intentions are important, like
Hmm.
and I lay that foundation with people at the beginning of things. I let them know, hey, this is what I'm looking for. I am open to things like this, but it all depends on the chemistry that I have with you, on how far we can go. I need to even when it comes to something casual, I need to at least know something about you. Like, if I don't know anything, then I'm just like, we're not going to hook up. We're not going to have sex or anything like that because I really don't know you.
Right.
And for any person who can do that, like you said, do you. And I love it for you. Seriously, I truly do. But it's like, even like for me, I hate it when someone tells me that, oh, they just go with the flow, or it depends on the vibes or something like that. But I'm like, that does not make me want to move forward with you. Like, if going with the flow means that I will just go to a different river, like I'm just going to go to the other river, a
Mm-hmm.
river that knows where it's leading to. Like, if you know
Yes.
that you're leading to the ocean, I'm going to join you. If you don't know what you're leading to, I don't want to jump in this because I don't want to be going down a waterfall. You didn't know that was rocky before I even hopped on.
Exactly. Well, and knowing, I mean, it's like knowing what we want, knowing what we desire, and knowing what the other person desires, whether it is for a very temporary thing or for something much more long term. I really think it really helps when we know ourselves. And sometimes the idea of, oh, I don't know, I'm just going to go with the flow is really more like, are you really just going like, are you just really going with the flow, or are you waiting for cues from something else or somebody else? Are you just not sure what you want? Like it, I don't know. I'm a big fan of consent, and I'm a big fan of, but I'm also a really big fan of communication and being
Mhm.
able to like clarify, like, where are you coming from? What are you doing? Why, what are you looking for? I mean, when
Ex-
I met my husband, we met online and we corresponded for a while, but we had sort of a two-part first conversation where like we talked on the phone, then I went out to dinner with some friends, and then we talked again. And the first thing I said in part two of our conversation was, I'm not looking to have kids. If you're interested in having kids, let's not even start the journey. And so many people wait on this kind of stuff. Like, and they're afraid that if they're really honest, like, I'm looking for marriage, I'm looking for children, this is what I'm interested in, or I'm not looking for children, but I am looking to settle down, or I'm not looking to settle down and I'm not looking for kids, or whatever. That so often we avoid these conversations because we're afraid that we're going to sound too serious and we're going to scare them off. And my feeling is, be upfront.
yes,
I've seen relationships be utterly blown to smithereens because one person wants kids and the other person doesn't.
exactly. Like, have these conversations, people. Have these conversations.
Have these conversations.
They're important.
Yes.
Well, on that note, I'm just going to do this one never have I ever, and then we're going to close things out.
Sounds like a
So,
plan.
never have I ever had sex while blindfolded.
Um, oh my God, you just reminded me.
So that sounds like a yes.
Okay, so yes, I'm pretty sure, yes, I have had sex while blindfolded. I'm kind of like, when was the last time I did that? So, but okay, I'm gonna can I like, I full confession
Full go,
completely.
you good.
Okay.
Safe
Okay, so
space.
19-year-old art student, just got my first camera, really, really excited. And I was having this major issue with laundry. Yes, this has to do with sex. And I was going to art school at Cleveland Institute of Art, and there was also the Cleveland Institute of Music at the same place. And I happened to hook up with this violinist. And so I was with this like classically trained musician, and he was, weird and quirky and kind of strangely emo and all of the things that I was attracted to and everything. And so he came back to my dorm room with me, and there was like laundry everywhere. And so he took me, and he tied me up with laundry, and I was on the floor, and he took my camera. I was fully clothed, and he tied me up, and he threw laundry all over me. And then, like, and I'm getting all like excited, like, oh my God, what is he going to do? This is going to be so exciting. This is going to be so fun. And then he proceeded to take pictures of me completely clothed, covered with my dirty laundry.
Wow.
Talk about not like, now, this was not, it did not go in the direction that I wanted to go in.
Wow.
It totally did not go in the direction I wanted to go in. And it was like, I mean, it was just such a funny situation because I'm all like, oh, this is going to be like, I was so young and so naive and I didn't, and so completely incapable of communicating. Like, I couldn't even be like, oh, wait a second, time out. What the fuck are you doing here? No, this is not my idea of a good time. You throwing dirty laundry at me. No, thank you very much. Stop taking pictures. But I was so just like gobsmacked by the whole thing and just like, but I was also like, really? Really? Oh, no, you didn't. Like, did you just really do that? So that's what you just reminded me of with that question.
I was so ready to go on this emotional, not emotion, but this roller coaster. Like, oh snap, she done been kinky, yes. And then it's just like, oh, this asshole just took pictures of me with dirty laundry.
But I mean, the thing is, like, talk about kinky. I mean, it was like, I mean, I suppose, I mean, that is a kink,
Mm,
like in terms of like humiliating, obnoxious, like just all of that stuff. Like, I'm sure there were some people who would have gotten off on it, but I was
true.
not one of them. Yeah. And
Like
yeah.
me, if I feel like if I was in that situation, just was like, sir, you were invited for dick. How dare
Yeah.
you?
How dare
Like,
you? I,
I thought we communicated about
I'm this
exchange of dick
luscious,
here.
I'm this luscious 19-year-old. Like, what the hell are
Do
you
you not see
doing
this
here?
beauty in front of you?
What are you gonna do with this? Come on.
Use the puss, okay? Use it. It is here to be used and appreciated.
And appreciated. Appreciated.
Oh
Yeah.
God, I have not been blindfolded yet, but I am definitely interested in trying that.
Blindfolding, I mean, I've also had the experience of, blindfolding within sex is wonderful because it really does allow us to really tune into our own body and just be, it's taking away one additional distraction. But another thing, I had this friend who was actually a lover of mine at one point, he and I shared a love for fragrances,
Ooh,
like, and especially essential oils. And we were both like, he and I were upset, like, he had as much of a level of sort of fascination with sort of like perfume as I do. And he would do this thing where he would like do these smell symphonies where you would put on a blindfold and then like he would introduce you to all of these amazing smells and sometimes tastes as well. But it was like so sensuous and so wonderful. So, I mean, talk about a wonder. And like, I mean, I'm sure it could have led, and there were times where he would do it as like a group party, where not a sex party, but just like a group party with us because we were part of the same, like, part of the same musical community. And so it was like we would have these like sensuous sensory experiences of like being blindfolded and smelling all of these amazing different smells like cardamom and like peppercorns from like the Caribbean and nutmeg and all of these, or like, and pine needles and things like that. So I've definitely experienced the very positive side of blindfolds as well as the not so positive side of blindfolds.
oh my gosh, now I'm just like I love Sense 2 and my mind is racing. Um, anyways, that is the show.
Okay.
But,
Yeah.
Jennifer, is there any last message that you would like to share with the audience before I close this out?
Ah, take the space that you need to find out who you are, especially if you are highly sensitive and empathic. You deserve to know what makes your heart sing, what makes your toes curl. And like, it's okay to take the space and claim the time to find out what's your truth.
Yes, yes. And we love a good curl. Yes, Lord.
Mm-mm-mm.
Yes.
Yeah.
Cool, child. All right. On that note, thank you so much for coming on to the podcast, Jennifer. I
Oh,
appreciate you so much.
Vernon, it has been such a pleasure. I just have to say, when on Podmatch you came across my thing, it was like, this completely goes against any, like, any of my regular people who are just like, oh my God, Jennifer, this is like not anything you usually talk about. But I was like, I really, really wanted to be on your show and have this conversation because you are doing such important work here.
Oh, don't make me cry. Oh my God. Oh my God. Okay. Whew. All right. I always get emotional when people give me props. I need to do better. I love it though.
Just say thank you.
Thank you.
That's the
Thank you.
first step. Yeah.
Thank you.
Thank you so much. That was so
Thank you so
wonderful. You made
much.
my day.
You really did.
Yeah.
To the listeners out there, thank you all so much for listening to the Holiloquy podcast, where we step out and speak on sexuality. Just in case no one else told you this today, you are beautiful, you are worthy of happiness and joy, you are enough and then some. You may not live up to the expectations of others, but that is okay. You are only required to walk in your own shoes. May each day you live lead you towards abundance. With that said, love you all and see you next episode. Bye. Thank you for listening to the Holiloquy podcast, where we step out and speak on sexuality. You can subscribe to the podcast through your favorite podcasting app and find us on the web at www.holiloquy.com. That's www.heauxliloquy.com. Share the podcast with your friends and join the conversation.